Good evening. This is your World News Today. Domestic and foreign news networks commit their resources to providing their audiences with the most compelling stories every day. Since January 20th, 2017, one of those ongoing stories is the narrative between Donald Trump, his administration, and its relationship with Russia, led by Vladimir Putin. Today, we'll take a brief but insightful journey behind the scenes of the various deals and communications and the consequences of those between the United States and Russia. We'll take a look at U.S.-based Politico, U.S.-based CNN, and U.S.-based Washington Post for our domestic coverage and their analysis on Russia's relations with the current administration. Then, for a comparative analysis, we'll turn to UK-based British Broadcasting Company as well as UK-based Reuters to see what the international media is observing on this relationship. From there, we will talk about how these news networks utilize the elaboration likelihood model, which is the theory based on how people are persuaded by presented information. Finally, we will look at the CNN effect, which looks at the effect of the availability of 24-hour news and getting stories out in a timely manner. My name is Ariana Hilliard, and here is your World News Today. To begin, this narrative is recent and has many theories behind it that have yet to be confirmed. However, the evidence of the ties between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are astounding. There is a tie to Putin via Paul Manafort, Donald Trump's former campaign advisor, who is the advisor to Viktor Yanukovych, the former president of Ukraine, who is a political ally of the Russian president Vladimir Putin. Stephen Colbert points out the ties between Trump and Putin via Jeff Sessions, the U.S. Attorney General who met twice during the Trump campaign with the Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. Finally, there is Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State for the United States, who is the former CEO of Exxon that did business with Rosneft, an oil company that is majority owned by the Russian government, and its president Igor Sechin, who, in addition to having a personal relationship with Tillerson, is close with Vladimir Putin. Considering that these ties are indirect, it puts into speculation the argument that Russia, more specifically Vladimir Putin, is cultivating a relationship with the United States that will enable him to profit largely from administration decisions made by Donald Trump. However, the degrees by which Donald Trump is separated from Vladimir Putin and his associates and cabinet picks offers validity into the need for investigation for their relationship. Evidence such as the Kremlin having to tell state media to reduce coverage of Donald Trump's activities in the United States gives insight into how the U.S.-Russian relations are viewed by Russians themselves. With the evidence mounting that a close relationship between Russia and the United States will be more economically beneficial for Trump and Putin more than their constituents, it seems that the leaders are intent on camouflaging the extent of the success of their relationship. For example, in an interview with CNBC, Putin says that ties between the two countries have deteriorated since U.S. President Donald Trump took office. As well, there is the flimsy denial of the DNC hacking accusations from the U.S. by the Russian officials, followed by distortions and redirections of where the hackers originated by Russian media. So before we begin our analysis, we will give you an overview of the communications and negotiations that have occurred since Donald Trump's inauguration in January of this year, as well as the bombing in Syria and the discussion of lifting sanctions that were imposed after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. First, there is former National Security Advisor Michael T. Flynn, who was appointed by United States President Donald Trump, who admitted to speaking with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak during the same time that the Obama administration was still admonishing Russia for their involvement with Crimea. During his campaign, then-candidate Donald Trump made his stance on being firm with Russia one of his main platform points. Talking of Putin's entrance into the Ukraine during the 2016 race, he said he's not going into the Ukraine despite the invasion of Crimea that happened 2 years before. When confronted that Putin was already in Crimea, Trump deflected, saying that his predecessor, then-President Barack Obama, was still in Russia himself. At the same time, during this race, a cache of 19,000 emails were leaked before the Democratic National Convention convened to nominate Hillary Clinton as the Democratic presidential candidate. This leak was later shown to have been at the hands of Russian intelligence, and yet President Trump faulted the DNC for having weak cyber defenses. shortly after his win of the presidency and his inauguration, Trump's administration altered the sanctions that the Obama administration had put in place after Crimea's invasion that limited financial support and aid for Russia during their takeover of Crimea. Trump's alterations now allow limited funds to be spent for requesting, receiving, utilizing, paying for, or dealing in licenses, permits, certifications, or notifications issued or registered by the FSB for the importation, distribution, or use of information technology products in the Russian Federation. Most recently, President Trump authorized the use of 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles to be launched at the Syrian air base that was reported to house the chemicals used in an attack on Syria. The chemical attacks occurred in early April 2017 and killed more than 70 people, 10 of which were confirmed to be child casualties. Russia called the missile attack an act of aggression, and Donald Trump said the decision to retaliate was part of the vital national security of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons. However, not only did U.S. officials say that they gave Russia advance warning of the strike, they also avoided targeting the airstrip itself, as well as a nearby Russian military area that would have caused significant infrastructure damage to Russian forces in Syria, according to the Washington Post. With our research, we are seeking to explain how media in America, as the key player, frames their reports on Russia, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump. We will use several theories to better understand the reporting on the U.S.-Russian ties vis-a-vis their leaders. In fact, there will be two communication concepts and theories that will be used to help explain in detail our research findings. These are media effects, which claims that mass media and media culture affects how audiences think and behave. Second, the CNN effect, which refers to how the 24/7 availability of news affects the political and economic climate here in the U.S. According to the theory, by focusing on instantaneous and ongoing media on a particular conflict, the news cycle effectively demands political attention. As we present our analysis, keep the following questions in mind. Number 1, how is the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin portrayed in the media? Number 2, what are the main conflicts shown between Russia and the United States? And number 3, how does the media influence public perception? For our research, we analyzed 12 news articles and related videos. 6 of the articles were from the United States, including 2 from CNN, 1 from Politico, 1 from the Washington Post, and 1 from CNBC. The 6 news articles from international media include 3 from the BBC, based out of the United Kingdom, and 3 from Reuters, also based out of the United Kingdom. Additionally, we used 1 article from the New York Times. The American media and international media coverage on the ties between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are the basis for identifying communication theories to explain the role of media in our society. After reading several articles and watching various videos, we concluded that our research shows that there is a considerable relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The American media is critical of this relationship, but also aims to protect the image of Donald Trump. Also, most of the media coverage in the United States is about Donald Trump's actions and their repercussions. We found that 5 out of 6 articles from the American media show that Donald Trump is reacting strongly to Russia and their actions, but also the manner in which the president defends Russia and the actions that they take is being called into question. For instance, in an article titled "Trump Defends Putin, You Thinks Our Country is So Innocent?", CNN reports that Trump, in an interview with then Fox Representative Bill O'Reilly, says that he respects his Russian counterpart, even with his history of bloodshed. In fact, Trump replies to O'Reilly, "There are a lot of killers. You think our country is so innocent?" As we can see, this is an example of media effects. How the media portrays Trump and his answers to Russia can affect or persuade how the audience will react. Now we will move on to international media. International media tends to be just as, if not more, critical of the relationship between the President of the United States and the Russian President. For example, we found a BBC article titled "Russia, the Scandal Trump Can't Shake." It's informative and outlines the evidence showing the cozy relationship between Putin and Trump. Furthermore, we found an article from the United Kingdom's Reuters titled "Exclusive, in call with Putin, Trump denounced Obama-era nuclear arms treaty," that states in his first call with President Putin as President of the United States, Trump denounced a treaty that caps U.S. and Russian deployment of nuclear warheads as a bad deal for the United States. The article further explains that Trump went on to tell Putin that the treaty was one of several bad deals negotiated by the predecessing administration. Mistrust and lack of knowledge on the part of the administration of the United States are a common theme in our articles. In fact, all 12 articles, when mentioning Trump and his defense of Putin, mention his lack of knowledge of the previous administration's negotiations and dealings. On more than one occasion, during interviews, Trump would have to turn to his aides to get a brief summary on the trade deals he was discussing. It would seem both American and international media are critical of Trump's decisions and how he decides to react to Russia's killer history, its invasion of Crimea, and its defense of Syria after the chemical attacks. Given that President Trump started out by denouncing most of the media outlets as fake news, it's not surprising that these media outlets would have a heightened sense of criticism towards this current administration. This is especially true of centralist American media. So, as you can see, both American media and international media have different ways of reporting on the possible relationship and ties between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. However, both American and international media reinforce the media framing theory, which is the idea that media highlights certain events and places them within a particular context to encourage or discourage certain interpretations. These news stories from the U.S., especially CNN, focus on the critical details. Additionally, both domestic and international media seem to leave the reader with enough details to share their same criticism, but not enough to support the administration if they choose to do so. This has been World News Today. We hope you have enjoyed this brief presentation on the media, Trump, and Russia. Signing off.